The hive had eaten 12 galaxies. Not out of hate. Out of hunger. They were 1 trillion bugs, each one the size of a dog. They flew through space like a living cloud. No ships. No guns. No plan. Just teeth. When they found a world, they landed on it like rain. Then they ate everything green, everything soft, everything alive. Then they left. Nothing personal. Just dinner. Every species in the galaxy knew the hive. Every species feared the hive. No one had ever stopped them. Not because they were weak. Because you cannot fight a billion teeth. You can only run or die. Then the hive found Earth. The human astronomers saw it first. A dark cloud at the edge of the solar system. At first they thought it was dust. Then it moved closer. Then sensors showed the truth. It was not dust. It was wings. Trillions of wings. The swarm stretched from the orbit of Jupiter all the way to the asteroid belt. It was so thick that it blocked the light of distant stars. The lead scientist at the Mars Observatory put down his coffee and started crying. He was not weak. He was just good at math. He calculated the numbers. 1 million hive creatures for every human soldier on Earth. 1,000 hive creatures for every man, woman, and child alive. Even if every human fought, even if children threw rocks and grandparents swung chairs, they would still be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. It was not a battle. It was a math problem with only one answer. News spread fast. Governments fell in hours. Some leaders ran. Some leaders prayed. Some leaders drank themselves to sleep. The United Earth Command sent a final message to the galaxy. A recording. Short and sad. It said, "We are outnumbered. We will not surrender. Play this recording after we are gone." The message ended. Silence filled every screen on Earth. People held each other. Cities went quiet. Even the news stopped talking. Then General Marcus Thorne picked up his phone. Thorne was not a famous general. He did not have medals or speeches or a strong jaw. He was a short, gray man with dirty hands and a farmer's accent. He had grown up in Kansas. He had spent his childhood killing locusts. He knew that swarms looked scary. He knew that swarms moved together. And he knew that swarms died together if you hit them in the right way. He called the remaining military commanders. They expected him to scream or beg or give orders. He did none of those things. He asked one question. How many artillery pieces do we have left? The commanders blinked. Artillery was old. Artillery was slow. Artillery was from a time when humans fought each other with metal and math. In an age of space lasers and orbital bombs, artillery was a joke. Most of the guns had been melted down for scrap. But Thorne did not ask for lasers. He asked for guns. The old kind. The kind that threw metal. The commanders checked their lists. 2,000 guns. Hidden in old bases. Covered in dust. Some from museums. Some from junkyards. But they worked. 2,000 guns. Each one capable of firing a shell 30 miles high. How many shells? Thorne asked. 500 per gun, sir. If we strip every depot on every continent. Thorne smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a farmer who has finally found his shotgun. He did the math on a napkin. 2,000 guns times 500 shells. 1 million shells. Each shell, if fitted with a proximity fuse, could burst into 8,000 tiny pieces of metal. Tungsten. Steel. Even broken glass. 8,000 pieces times 1 million shells. 8 billion pieces. He looked at the commanders. The hive has 1 trillion bugs. But they are not 1 trillion bugs. They are a cloud. A cloud that breathes. A cloud that chokes. We do not need to kill all of them. We only need to kill enough to make the ones behind them fly through a cloud of their own dead. The commanders stared. One of them whispered, "Sir, they have never faced shrapnel." "Exactly," said Thorne. "They have never faced artillery. They have faced ships. They have faced lasers. They have faced armies running at them with swords. But they have never faced a gun that hides behind a mountain and drops metal on their heads from the sky. They do not know what indirect fire is. They do not know what a proximity fuse is. They do not know that 1 million bugs can die in 1 second without ever seeing who killed them." He stood up. He pointed at the screen where the swarm grew larger every hour. "They outnumber us 1 million to 1. But numbers do not matter if you cannot reach the enemy. They will reach us. They will land on us. But first, they have to fly through us. And we are going to fill the sky with so much metal that the hive chokes on its own children." The commanders sat in silence. Then one by one they nodded. They did not smile. They did not cheer. They just got to work. Outside, the swarm grew closer. Inside, 2,000 old guns woke up from a long sleep. And General Marcus Thorne, the farmer from Kansas, loaded the first shell himself. He had killed locusts before. This was just bigger. The bunker was 3 miles under Wyoming. Cold. Dark. Smelling of old coffee and fear. General Thorne stood at the front of a long metal room. Behind him, a screen showed the swarm. It looked like a living storm. Millions of wings. Millions of mouths. Moving closer every hour. His officers sat at a long table. They were good soldiers. Brave soldiers. But their faces were pale. One major, a young woman with shaking hands, spoke first. "Sir, we have 2,000 artillery pieces. They have 1 million combat drones for every single shell we fire." She let the number hang in the air. 1 million to 1. Not a battle. A slaughter. Thorne nodded. He did not look worried. He looked like a farmer checking his fence before a storm. "How many shells per gun?" he asked. The major checked her tablet. 500, sir. If we strip every depot, every base, every museum, every old ship. We even found 100 shells from the Second World War. Still in a bunker in France. So 1 million shells total, Thorne said. He walked to a whiteboard. Old style. Real chalk. He wrote the numbers slowly. 1 million. Then he drew a line. Then he wrote 8,000. He turned to face his officers. Each shell, with a proximity fuse, can fragment into 8,000 tungsten pellets. That is the old kind of shrapnel. Small. Fast. Sharp. We are not using explosives to kill them. We are using math. A captain in the back row raised his hand. He was a quiet man. An engineer. He did the multiplication in his head. Then he said it out loud. 8 billion pellets, sir. The room went so quiet that the hum of the air filters became loud. 8 billion. 8 billion tiny pieces of metal, each one moving faster than sound. Each one capable of cutting through hive flesh like paper. Correct, said Thorne. He put down the chalk. He looked at each officer one by one. Now tell me, how many hive creatures need to be killed to break a swarm? No one answered. The major looked at her tablet. The captain looked at the floor. A colonel in the front row opened his mouth, then closed it. They had all been trained to think in numbers. But this number was too big. Too scary. Too impossible. Thorne answered himself. Not all of them. Just enough to make the ones behind them swim through a cloud of their own dead. He tapped the screen where the swarm moved like a river of bugs. The hive has never faced shrapnel. They have never faced airburst. They have never faced a species that turns mining equipment into cannons and garbage into grapeshot. They think war is about numbers. They think the side with the most teeth wins. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent his whole life proving that smart beats strong. The hive has never fought humans, he said. We do not win with numbers. We win with geometry. We win with angles. We win by making every shell count twice, 3 times, 1,000 times. They outnumber us 1,000,000 to 1. But we only need to hit 1 in 1,000,000 to make the rest choke. He drew more numbers on the board. Simple math. Easy to understand. If 1 shell killed 1,000 hive creatures, then 1 million shells killed 1 billion hive creatures. That was only 1% of the swarm. But 1% of the swarm was still 10 billion pounds of dead bugs falling through the sky. Dead bugs do not disappear, Thorne said. They fall. They clog. They fill the air with ash and chitin. The hive breathes through its skin. It flies with wings. What happens when the air is full of broken glass and dead friends? The captain answered. They choke, sir. Correct. They choke. They cannot see. They cannot breathe. They cannot fly without tearing their own wings on the bodies of their own kind. We are not trying to kill every bug. We are trying to turn the sky into a wall of meat. He turned off the screen. The swarm disappeared. Now the officers could only see Thorne. A short, gray man with dirty hands and a calm voice. The hive has never faced artillery because artillery is stupid. It is old. It is slow. It is not fancy. Any species with space travel could build artillery. But they do not, because they think war is about ships and lasers and shields. They forget that sometimes the simplest weapon is the most terrifying. He picked up a shell from the floor. It was old, rusty, ugly. He held it like a baby. This is not a weapon of honor. It is not a weapon of glory. It is a weapon of math. And math does not care how many teeth you have. Math only cares about angles, speed, and weight. We have the angles. We have the speed. And we have 8 billion pieces of weight. He put the shell down. He looked at his officers. Their faces had changed. The pail was gone. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something new had grown. Hunger. Not for blood. For a chance. Any questions? Thorne asked. No one spoke. Good. Now get to work. We have 2,000 guns to load, and a sky to fill with metal. Humanity did not build heroes. They did not build ships. They did not build bombs. They built guns. Old guns. The kind their great-grandparents had used. Howitzers from the 20th century, still dirty from old wars. Railguns from the 22nd, pulled out of museums. And homemade things welded together from bulldozers, subway trains, and farm equipment. If it could throw metal, they used it. They dragged the guns everywhere. Into the Rocky Mountains. Into the Andes. Into the Himalayas. They aimed them straight up, like fingers pointing at God. They filled shells with anything that could cut, burn, or blind. Tungsten darts from old factories. Molten copper from melted wires. Glass shards from broken windows. Even sand heated into plasma. Nothing was wasted. Everything was a weapon. General Thorne watched from his bunker. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He just watched the screen as the swarm grew closer. The hive entered Earth's atmosphere at Mach 12. 12 times the speed of sound. They were not ready for wind resistance. They were not ready for gravity. And they were certainly not ready for 2 million shells rising to meet them. The first volley fired at exactly 4:17 in the morning. Global time. Every gun on Earth fired at once. The sound was so loud that birds fell from the sky. Windows shattered in cities 100 miles away. The ground shook. Old men who had fought in wars cried. Not from fear. From awe. The shells rose. 40,000 feet. 50,000 feet. 60,000 feet. Then each shell burst. Inside each shell was a tiny computer, old but smart. It knew exactly when to explode. At the right moment, each shell became a cloud of 8,000 pieces of metal. Each piece moving faster than sound. Each piece looking for something soft. The sky turned white. Not from explosions. From 8 billion pieces of metal reflecting the sun. It looked like snow. But it was not snow. It was death. The hive had no armor. They had no shields. They had never needed them. In 12 galaxies, nothing had ever hit them from 40,000 feet away. They only knew how to eat and fly and eat again. They did not know what shrapnel was. They did not know what a proximity fuse was. They did not know that the sky could turn into knives. The first million hive creatures died without knowing what killed them. 1 second they were flying. The next second they were nothing. Just pieces. Just blood. Just falling. The second million died confused. They saw their friends turn to mist. They heard nothing. No gunshots. No explosions. Just the whistle of shells passing by. Then the whistle stopped. Then they were gone. The third million tried to turn around. They were the smart ones. They saw the death ahead. They tried to fly back up. But the swarm behind them pushed forward. 1 trillion bugs cannot stop quickly. 1 trillion bugs cannot think quickly. They can only eat and fly and eat again. So they pushed. And they died. General Thorne watched. His officers cheered. Soldiers hugged each other. Some fell to their knees. But Thorne did not cheer. He did not smile. He just picked up the radio and said one word. Reload. The guns fired again. And again. And again. Each volley took 3 minutes to load. 3 minutes to aim. 3 minutes to fire. In the first hour, the guns fired 20 volleys. 40 million shells. 320 billion pellets. The sky above Earth became a wall of metal. Nothing could fly through it and live. Not bugs. Not birds. Not even dust. The hive kept coming. They did not know how to stop. They had never stopped. They had never been stopped. So they flew into the wall. And they died. And they died. And they died. By the second hour, the bodies began to fall. Not as rain. As mountains. Chunks of hive flesh the size of cars crashed into oceans. Pieces of wings the size of houses covered farmlands. Blood fell like red snow. The air smelled of iron and burning hair. People on the ground had to wear masks to breathe. But the guns kept firing. By the third hour, the hive stopped advancing. Not because they wanted to. Because they could not move forward without swimming through a river of their own dead. The bodies piled so high in the sky that they blocked the sun. It became dark at noon. The temperature dropped. The world turned cold and red. Thorne watched. His face was stone. His hands were steady. He picked up the radio again. Reload. A young lieutenant grabbed his arm. Sir, we have killed 10 billion of them. Maybe more. When is it enough? Thorn looked at the young man. He did not get angry. He did not shout. He just said, when they stop coming. He turned back to the screen. The swarm was still there. Smaller now. Thinner. But still there. Still hungry. Still moving. Reload, he said again. The guns fired. The sky turned white. And somewhere above the clouds, a trillion bugs learned a new word. Fear. By hour 6, the hive had lost 20 million creatures. 20 million. It sounded like a big number. It was a big number. But the swarm had a trillion bugs. 20 million was less than 1%. Most generals would have panicked. Most armies would have run out of ammo. But General Thorn was not most generals. And the guns were still firing. The problem was not the number of dead. The problem was what the dead left behind. Hive bodies did not disappear. They fell. They burned. They filled the upper atmosphere with ash, chitin, and blood. The sky turned gray. Then black. Then red. The air above every continent became a soup of broken wings and shattered shells. The next wave of hive creatures had to fly through the remains of their own kind. They had no choice. The swarm was too dense to go around. Too stupid to stop. They flew forward because they had always flown forward. But now flying forward meant choking. Their breathing pores clogged. Hive creatures breathed through small holes in their sides. Those holes were not made for ash. They were not made for blood. They were not made for the ground-up bodies of their own brothers. 1 breath. 2 breaths. Then the holes sealed shut with sticky red paste. The creatures fell. Not dead. Suffocating. Their wings ripped on broken shells. Hive wings were thin. Delicate. Like paper. They worked fine in clean air. But the air above Earth was not clean. It was full of sharp edges. Every flap tore small holes. Every flap made the holes bigger. Soon the wings stopped working. The creatures fell. Not dead. Broken. Their sensors saw nothing but death. Hive creatures did not have eyes like humans. They had heat sensors. They could feel the warmth of living things from miles away. But above Earth, everything was warm. The ash was warm. The blood was warm. The falling bodies were warm. The sensors could not tell food from friend from fire. So they stopped working. The creatures flew blind. The swarm's greatest strength had always been density. A trillion bugs packed tight together. No enemy could survive that many teeth. No army could stand against that much weight. But density became a weakness when the air turned to poison. The hive could not spread out. They did not know how. They had never needed to. So they stayed packed tight. And they choked together. By the end of hour 6, the hive had lost another 10 million. Not to shrapnel. To suffocation. To blindness. To the simple fact that a swarm cannot breathe when it is drowning in itself. By hour 12, the hive stopped advancing. Not because they were defeated. They still had 990 billion bugs left. They still had more teeth than Earth had grains of sand. But they could not move forward. The air was too thick. The bodies were too many. Every step forward meant flying through a wall of their own dead. The hive mind finally asked a question it had never needed to ask before. The hive mind was not a single brain. It was a trillion tiny thoughts connected together. It had never faced a problem it could not solve by eating. But this was not a problem of hunger. This was a problem of physics. The hive mind asked, "What is this?" From Earth's surface, a single radio transmission answered. It was General Thorn. His voice was calm, almost bored. He had not slept in 2 days. He had not eaten in 1. But his voice was steady. He said, "This is artillery. You have never seen it because you have never fought anyone who had to be clever instead of strong. Every other species you ate had big ships and big lasers and big armies. They tried to fight you face to face. They tried to meet your teeth with their teeth. That was stupid. You have more teeth. You always have more teeth." He paused. The hive mind listened. It did not understand anger. It did not understand pride. But it understood numbers. And Thorn was giving it numbers. We do not have 1 trillion soldiers. We have 2,000 guns. And enough math to make every shell count. You are not facing an army. You are facing a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill from a distance. We learned to kill without seeing. Without touching. Without risking our own skin. You have never faced that. Because no one else was crazy enough to try. He looked at the screen. The swarm was still there. But it was not moving. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the hive was still. "You outnumber us 1,000,000 to 1, Thorn continued. But numbers do not matter if you cannot reach us. and you cannot reach us, because between you and us, there is a wall of your own dead. You built that wall, not us. You kept coming. You kept dying. You filled the sky with your own bodies until you could not breathe. He put down the radio. Then he picked it up again. One more sentence. Outnumbered? That is just a target-rich environment. The hive mind paused. It processed the words. It processed the numbers. It processed the wall of dead that hung in the sky above Earth. Then, for the first time in a million years, it made a decision it had never made before. It turned around. Not because it was afraid. The hive did not feel fear. Not because it was defeated. The hive had never been defeated. It turned around because the math no longer worked. Forward meant death. Backward meant food somewhere else. The hive always followed the math. So the swarm turned. Slowly. Clumsy. Like a river reversing direction. The trillion bugs began to fly away. Not running. Just leaving. Above Earth, the guns went silent. General Thorne watched the screen. He did not cheer. He did not cry. He just nodded once. Then he went to find some coffee. The swarm did not run. The hive did not know how to run. They turned away slowly, like a great river changing direction. It took them 3 full days to pull back from Earth. The guns watched them go. The gunners were too tired to cheer. They just sat down in the mud and cried. The hive mind calculated everything. Losses. Gains. Future probabilities. It had never retreated before. Not in 12 galaxies. Not in a million years. It had never met a species that could kill faster than the hive could breed. But humans were worse than that. Humans had done something no other species had ever done. They had taught the hive a new emotion. Respect. Not fear. The hive did not feel fear. Not love. The hive did not feel love. But respect? Respect was useful. Respect meant remembering. Respect meant learning. The hive mind added a new rule to its trillion small brains. Do not eat this world. It bites. For 3 weeks, the remaining hive creatures orbited Earth at a safe distance. They did not attack. They did not leave. They just watched. They wanted to understand. How had 2,000 old guns stopped a trillion hungry mouths? The answer was simple. Humans did not fight fair. Humans did not fight strong. Humans fought smart. And smart was harder to eat than strong. On the 21st day, the hive left. Not defeated. Not destroyed. Simply redirected. There were other galaxies. Other worlds. Other food. Earth was small. Earth was loud. Earth was not worth the math. The hive mind sent a single message to the galaxy. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was advice. Short and clear. Do not eat this world. It bites. The galaxy listened. General Thorne became a legend overnight. His face was on every screen. His name was in every song. Children drew pictures of him holding a cannon. Old soldiers saluted his picture in bars. But Thorne did not like attention. He gave interviews because he had to. In every interview, he said the same thing. Artillery is just applied geometry. The hive brought numbers. We brought angles. And angles always win. People wanted him to say something heroic. Something about courage or sacrifice or freedom. But Thorne was a farmer. He knew that locusts did not care about courage. Locusts cared about math. And the math said, if you fill the sky with enough metal, the locusts go somewhere else. Humanity did not celebrate. They were too tired. Too sad. Too busy. They rebuilt the cities that had been damaged by falling hive bodies. They buried the dead. Human dead. Hive dead. It did not matter. Dead was dead. They dug graves for both species. Some people thought that was strange. But Thorne understood. They were just hungry, he said. We were just scared. Nobody wanted to be here. But here we are. And they built more guns. Not because they wanted war. Because they had learned a lesson. The old weapons were sometimes the best weapons. The hive had conquered galaxies with teeth and hunger. Humanity stopped them with math and metal. Lasers could be blocked. Shields could be broken. Ships could be outrun. But a cloud of hot tungsten moving at supersonic speed? There was no blocking that. There was no breaking that. There was only getting out of the way. The galaxy took note. Other species asked humans for artillery plans. The Iridani wanted them for meditation. They said the rhythm of loading and firing helped them find inner peace. The Vorth wanted them for calculation. They said artillery was the most elegant math problem they had ever seen. The Silex just wanted to see the look on the hive's face. They played the recording of the hive mind's message over and over. Do not eat this world. It bites. The Silex thought it was very funny. Humans gave the plans freely. They did not ask for money or favors or thanks. But they added a warning. Short, clear, human. Artillery does not win wars. People do. And people who refuse to give up, even when outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Those are the most dangerous things in the universe. The hive never returned. They found other worlds, other food, other problems, but they never forgot Earth. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, 1,000,000,000,000 creatures taught their young one rule. The rule was passed from mother to child, from swarm to swarm, across the empty spaces. Avoid yellow suns, avoid blue planets, and never, ever get within range of a human with a calculator and a cannon. On Earth, life went back to normal. People argued about taxes and sports, and what to have for dinner. General Thorne retired to his farm in Kansas. He grew corn. He fixed fences. He kept one old howitzer in his barn, cleaned and oiled. Just in case. One night, a reporter asked him if he was afraid the hive might come back. Thorne chewed on a piece of grass. He looked up at the stars. Then he smiled. "Let them," he said. "I have more shells.